It's really good to be with you. We are starting off a new series here that we'll be in probably for the next 3 weeks. And we're just calling it Reset and Renew. One of the things that I believe it's really important, we have rhythms in our lives. Let's just admit it. A lot of us have rhythms. All of our rhythms are a little different, probably depending on which stage of life that you are in. But for a lot of us, our rhythms are kind of dictated, even if you're not in the school anymore, almost by the school year calendar. And so what we even do as a church is we kind of throw a lot of our rhythms as a church around the local school's calendar, and students and teachers are getting ready to go back. Students are getting ready to go back to school. Teachers are getting ready to go back to school and go back to work as well. And we have a number of teachers. My wife is a teacher, so I just have to honor that, or I'll get in trouble. No, she doesn't. She's awesome. I make jokes about Emily, and the reason I'm able to do that is because she's an incredible wife. And allows me to pick on her a little bit. She'll get me back, though. Don't worry. Yeah, you can clap for Emily. But what happens is that during the summer, and a lot of these things they're incredible. You go on vacation, you travel, you enjoy the weather. You're out of church. You might be on a different schedule than you're typically on, and so probably even some spiritual disciplines that you have might even kind of fall by the wayside. And what happens is you might even kind of feel yourself kind of drift, or you're not hearing from the Lord as much as you typically do, or probably just because you're not paying attention, let's be honest, at different times. Or let's just put it like you are enjoying different things that the Lord has given you. We just got done back on some kind of mini vacations, some camping trips. I love the lake. I love to be outside, all those sorts of things, and really just to give God thanks for what He has created makes a huge difference in my life, and I love doing that. But one of the things that traveling does to me often is it does kind of bump me off of my rhythms and my habits that do help keep me in kind of a relationship with the Lord. And if I'm not in the right relationship with the Lord, I'm often not in right relationship with other people. And so what we're just challenging you to do over the next several weeks is just kind of get back on track here. And I'm going to begin this morning by teaching out of Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12. So if you have your Bibles, you can go to Hebrews 12. And I'm just going to read verses 1 through 3. And I'm just going to kind of walk through this and teach through this morning. And so Hebrews 12, verses 1 through 3. It'll be on the screen as well. But if you have your paper Bibles with you or your devices, whatever you use, I do encourage you to get those out. I feel like it's always helpful to read along. I'm reading through the NLT. That's another thing I'll just tell you. I mix versions up every week depending on what I think is either the easiest to teach out of or sometimes just the best translations. I know I'm not proficient in the Greek, but I know enough to be able to say, hey, like this is the most helpful translation. And so here's the NLT, which actually isn't a like word for word translation, but it's a good explanation of what is going on here. So we're told this. The writer of Hebrews here says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith. And he's going to continue here, and I want to stop right here, and I want to sit down on this for a moment, because we always want to ask, when there's a therefore, what's the therefore? So the writer of the church, or the writer here of Hebrews, he's encouraging the church. And before chapter 12 of Hebrews, there's chapter 11. And that's like Bible teaching right there, right? Solid Bible teaching, just in case you were wondering. In chapter 11, what is going on is the writer is encouraging the church, and he talks about all these great heroes of faith and what it looks like to live by faith. And so he mentions men like Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, and Samuel. He also kind of just includes these guys like Daniel in what he talks about. And what he says is that because of their faith and the faithfulness of God, these men, they conquered kingdoms, they enforced justice, they stopped the mouths of lions, they raised the dead, they walked in the fire, and they survived fire, and they were mighty in war. And so he talks about these men of faith, and he says they were all like witnesses, and the word for witness there is martyr, people who are willing to give their lives up for, or have even given their lives up for God. And what they're trying to do here, what the writer is trying to do, is show the faithfulness of God to men and women like this throughout history. I had the privilege of getting to go to Beeson Divinity School, seminary. It's called it's a seminary. Seminary is just like a fancy word for graduate school for pastors. And the chapel was really incredible at Beeson Divinity School. And at the kind of front center of the chapel, so it would be right here, there was this massive rotunda. And up in the rotunda, and you can actually bring it up here, there's this painting, and it's really hard to see on the screens, but what you see are men and women kind of in a circle there. And what this is supposed to be is the great cloud of witnesses that are written about in chapter 11, but not, let me back up a little bit. They're not really the men and women that are written about in chapter 11 of Hebrews. These are great theologians. These are great pastors. These are great teachers. These are great leaders throughout the church history. And so when you were worshiping in the chapel that I was preparing to go into ministry with, as you were worshiping, if you looked up, you saw these people. So you saw like Perpetua and Felicitas, who were some of the like first Christian martyrs in the 3rd century. They gave their lives. These are women who gave their lives on behalf of Jesus. Here they were sharing Jesus with people, and they killed them for it. Athanasius is in there. He's a defender of the Trinity, like Christian theology, solid Christian theology. Augustine, one of the foundational Christian theologians that married like the good doctrine with Christian experience. Thomas Aquinas, a great philosopher, and then you have people like Luther, Cranmer, John Calvin, John Wesley, and they're all there, and we're preparing for ministry, and the point is that we are looking up at really what were ordinary men and women who decided to give their lives to Christ and for Christ. These are people of great faith. And my question for you, like as I point these people out, because some of you, I started reading off those names, and you're like, I have no idea who any of those people are. And that's fine. But if we were to put a rotunda in this building, who would go up there for you? Like who would you look up at and see them looking down on you and be like, yeah, I want to have faith like that person. That person's up in heaven right now. They had a life well lived. Like, I wouldn't mind my life being something like theirs. Who would that be for you? Maybe it's a mom or a dad, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, friend, somebody that you have read about in history, somebody that had been faithful, and you watched how God was faithful to them and had loved them and like been there with them, and you watch them walk with the Lord and the Lord do things in them and through them that you wish would happen in your own life. Who would that be? Now, the point of the great cloud of witnesses or the rotunda there in the divinity school wasn't that these people are up in heaven and they're just like merely like spectators, or they're even looking down on you, like kind of with their finger wagging. Like, you need to live up to me, or you need to live up to the things that I did. The point is actually that we would look up, that we would look up and we would see what it looks like if we were to live with great faith. That's the point. Is that these are people who had great faith. And because of their great faith, then we are witnesses to the faithfulness of God through them. Where's Jill at? Is she here? There's the hat right there. I should have known, right? They're cheerleaders is what they are, right? Jill loves cheerleaders. Right? I used to like to date them in high school, but that's all. Sorry. These are cheerleaders. They're cheering us on. They are cheering us on. And so this is why the Bible continues to go on and say, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race that God has set before us. And so we have the therefore, and then he says, because of this great cloud of witness, because of these people in the rotunda that are looking down, but we look up to, here's what I want you to do. This is the primary point of these 3 verses and this transition here. The point of this passage is very simple and it's very clear, and here it is. It's to get in the race. It's to get in the race. The New Testament is full of sports metaphors. This is because what they are trying to do is they are trying to evangelize the Greek culture. And the Greeks, like many of us, were obsessed with sport. Most major cities had something similar to like a coliseum or a stadium, some much bigger than even some of our modern stadiums. The athletes were celebrities back then, just as they were now. And so what you see going on is that you see Paul over and over again, and whoever the writer of Hebrews is, we're actually not real sure. It could be Paul, it could be Apollos, it could be somebody else. We don't really know, but when you see somebody even like Paul, he does this over and over again. He compares following Jesus to a wrestling match. He compares it to boxing or fighting, and in all three instances, what Paul essentially says is that, like, you aren't just a shadow box. Like, you aren't to pretend fight. That you are actually in a real wrestling match against spiritual forces of darkness and evil. Like, you're not just to throw punches against the air. That there are forces, there are even people, there are systems, there are ideas, there are ways that you think that will ruin and damage your life. And if you don't see yourself in an actual battle or an actual fight, like, you're going to lose in this life. And so what Paul is doing with those sports metaphors is he's just telling you, don't treat your life lightly. Like, you're in a real battle and you're in a real fight. He goes on and he uses some other metaphors, and he says simply this. He says that athletes require self-control and they pursue a goal. In other words, athletes have a regiment that they're on. You can't, if you notice, that good athletes, they don't just eat and do whatever they want, whenever they want. Like, there are disciplines that they have to implement into their life if they are going to be successful, if they are going to win at whatever they are competing at. Right? That's part of the reason we're having this series here. It's really easy to get off some of those regimens. It's really easy to not do some of the things or even be a part of some of the things that we know are good for us as we are competing. And so in Hebrews 12 here, what he is doing is he is comparing our life with Christ with a race. It's being compared to a race. And the question for us all is, are we in it? Are we running the race? Are you running the race that Jesus has laid out for you? And here's the thing, all of you know whether you are or not. You've all probably been or you've watched a race. When you're when you're at a race or any sporting event, it's pretty clear who's on the sidelines and who's not, right? It's pretty clear who's on the track and who's in the bleachers. So where are you sitting? Where are you sitting? Now, the reason I ask you that question is because until you get to the end of Rotunda, you should be running. You should be running. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to take us through basically kind of 4 points here and then another kind of series of applications that are going to help us all. That I think are really important for us to see as the writer talks about being in the race. So I want to point these things out to you about this race. Is that you are to run with endurance. You are to run with endurance when you get in the race here. This is not a sprint. The writer doesn't call us to sprint, but he says to run with endurance or perseverance. When the Bible compares, there's actually a couple different places where the New Testament writers say that we're in a race. Every time they talk about us being in a race, it's an endurance race. I have a deep respect for endurance runners, for cross-country runners. Now, I was a football guy growing up. Still love football, not an endurance runner. But you come out of football practice, and you'd see the cross-country team, and they'd be running around in their little shorts and, physiques that, hey, don't look like that, but that's fine. And some football guys, they would say things every once in a while, look at the runner or whatever. And I'd be like, hold on a second, dude. I was like, let me give you some advice. And I actually would say this. I'd say, do you realize they bring our GPA up in the athletic department? If it weren't for them, our athletic department GPA would be real low. And I would tell them, this is a life hack here for any of you getting ready to go off to college, If there are cross-country runners in your class, sit beside them. I would tell the football players, like, go sit beside the cross-country runners because they all get really good grades. They really do. There's something about, right, running that disciplines you to just know what it takes to do well in life. Like to be a good runner, it requires a ton of self-discipline, perseverance, and determinations. Distance runners know how to push themselves mentally and physically. And these are attitudes and actions that they're necessary to succeed in life. They really are. Some of you who don't like to run like me, I can run, I just don't like it, right? At least long distances. And then some of you, those of you who like to run, you're going to like this as well. The Greek word for race here is agon. It's where we get our English word for agony. That's not a joke. That's a reality. The writer here is pointing out that if you get in the race, there's going to come a time where the race gets hard and you're going to want to quit. Like, you're going to want to get out. And what he is trying to do is he's trying to tell a bunch of people, this is why there's Hebrews 11, like, remember all those people? Like, keep going. Keep going. Significance and victory in life do not come with ease, but comes with a willingness to endure hardship and to refuse to give up. No one in that rotunda, no one that was mentioned in Hebrews 11 had an easy life. And here's the thing, like, you don't want one. You don't want one. Here's how I know this. And guys, I know this is true for you. None of you get done doing something that was easy and go, that was awesome. Right? No. The experiences that you look back on in life, you go, oh man, that was hard. Like, yeah, we had to do X, Y, and Z. We had to figure we had to figure this out. Like, and when you do, what do? You go, that was awesome, right? Let's go do it again. I was miserable. Let's go do it. That's it. Like, you look back on life like with those experiences. And that's what you're proud of. I mean, think about Moses, even. God's call on his life. He could have stayed within the ease of Egypt. He was a prince. Gave it up to go be with the slaves and to lead them out. Let me forget Moses. What about Jesus? People wanting to put a crown on him. Let's make him king. Let's make him a Lord, like, here and now on earth. Like, let's set up his kingdom now. What does he do? He trades it for the shame of the cross. If you want to live a significant life, you're going to go through some agony. You're going to need some endurance. You're going to need some perseverance. That's the kind of race that you are on. And that's the kind of race that God has called you to. So run your race with endurance. Second is this. It is run your race. He says, let us run our race. Let us run your race. This means no matter your age, no matter your ability, no matter your socioeconomic status, you have a race to run. I don't care who you are, where you've been, what you've done. Jesus is calling you to get in on the race. And some of you still aren't, and you're full of excuses. You're full of excuses of why you can't run. Right? I get it. I don't like to run. Right? I don't like to run. Got bad knees. That's fine. Like, I'm not calling you to actually run here. But it might be I wasn't raised in the church, right? I'm too old. I'm too young. I'm too slow. I have nothing to offer. Some of us, it's just I'm too busy, right? And we might say, I can't. And I will tell you, as a father of young kids, one of the things that I hate hearing the most when I ask my kids to do something is I can't. Like nothing almost makes my blood boil more than that. For two reasons. One is because they're not doing what I asked them to do. But two is because I rarely ask them to do things I don't think they can do. When they tell me I can't, what they're telling me is that I've asked them to do something that I know as their father that they are capable of doing, but they don't believe they can do. that makes me more angry than them just disobeying or just not wanting to do it, is when they try something and they maybe fail at first and they don't try again. All of you have a race to run, and it's your race that God has given you, and you are capable of running it. You are capable of doing it. God has not called you to a life or to conquer certain things that you can't conquer without faith in Him, like with faith in Him. God is faithful. And when He is calling you, He is expecting you to exercise faith in Him and to walk with Him. As you run, well, let's say it like this, I guess is better, to run with Him as you are in the race with Him. So every person has the race, and I would say this too, just for each of you and even me, as I look about the people in Rotunda, they're all from generations. It spanned from essentially the 3rd century to the 19th century in the Rotunda. And the point of that, the stopping point, was that in our own century, in our own times, in our own context, we have particular races to run, both individually and as a church. Like, you realize, like, the church is answering different questions in 2025 than it was in 1825. And so every generation has its own issues, its own problems that they are trying to conquer, its own race that is trying to run. Run your race. We need to run our race too as a church. 3 is this, is let go of what doesn't matter. Let go of what doesn't matter. The writer says, let us strip off every weight that slows us down. Have you noticed on race day, a runner has its uniform, and I kind of already alluded to this. He's got like he or her has like the little shorts on. These are endurance racers, right? And like a tank top, or just a super tight shirt that's not going to get caught up in the wind. Why? Because they want to be light. They want to be as light as possible. If they're not, they will be slowed down. And the priority when you are in a race is to win it. Or at the very least, right, run your best time possible. That's the point. So you will never see a distance runner show up with one of those weighted vests I see all the women in our neighborhood walking around with right now. Right? Emily asked for one of those the other day. I was like, I got an extra life jacket. We just stuff some rocks in, too. Like, where's she spending money on a vest? Like, no, you're good. It's just so if you see Emily in a life jacket walking around, it's not because she's going swimming. Right? She just want to fit in with the women in the neighborhood. Why would they not wear that? Right? Because it'll slow them down. It'll slow them down. It would keep them from winning. Right? So the point that he's making is if you want to finish well, you can't carry everything. If you want to get in the race, you can't carry everything. I know I made fun of those weighted vests a little bit. They're cool. Like, there's nothing wrong with those. They're good to train in, even if you're a runner. But once you get in the race, it's time to get rid of the vest. Like, it has to come off. You can no longer wear it and run well. And so for us, this is a real simple metaphor here. This is a real simple image, is that you have to evaluate what keeps you from running the race well and get rid of it or take it off. Maybe I can put it like this. This passage is very clearly asking us to evaluate our priorities. Every Easter, I give you a survey, and I ask you what you want me to talk about. And I think it was this year or last year, one of the top vote getters was priorities. Josh, we want you to talk about our priorities. I don't feel like I need to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, right? What are your priorities? Like, is following Jesus and being in the race your top priority? Do you value winning the race that God has you on, or are you more concerned looking like a winner to the people around you? Right? And so, like, we can be honest about this. I struggle with this as much as any of you do. Right? A lot of times our faith takes like second or maybe like third fiddle to a whole host of things. Our hobbies, our habits, our lifestyle, like, you name it. And for somebody even like me, who, Midwesterner, loves sports, you even reading, like, this is an easy passage for me to preach. I love, like, athletics. Like, with, kids or even my own self, like, we can sign our kids up or ourselves up for every sport, every club, every extracurricular activity, like, everything. Like, they got to be able to play every instrument. They got to be able to do X, Y, and Z, go to this lesson, that lesson, or whatever. And typically, what typically ends up kind of falling off the list? Right? Their spiritual well-being. The most like important battles for them to win, the most important goal for them to shoot towards. We often don't ever even keep it in front of ourselves or others, if because we're just going to put things in front of what we know is good for us or good for our children or good for our families or whatever that might be. And none of these things that I'm even talking about are bad. Like, a lot of them are really good. And let me just give some of you permission. Like, you don't have to be an expert at everything. Like, if you could be an expert at one thing, make it following Jesus. Like, your kids don't have to be the best at everything. They really don't. Like, I hope they are the best at some things. Like, that's awesome. I'd love to watch my kids be just really good at a few things. I love that. There's nothing probably brings more pleasure in my life right now than watching my kids compete at certain things or whatever that might be. Right? But they don't have to do everything. That's okay. Their souls are more important than them winning every championship or even like knowing how to play every instrument or even getting straight A's. I'm preaching to myself right now. And so what's slowing you down? Get rid of what doesn't matter. That's 3. 4 is remove the sin that trips you up. Remove the sin that trips you up. We're told especially the sin that so easily trips us up. Now, there are misplaced priorities, and these things slow us down. They might not keep us from really following Jesus or running the race, but we're not running as fast as we could be. Now, sin is much different. It makes us fall flat on our face. Sin will have you fall flat on your face. Lying, cheating, stealing, uncontrolled anger, greed, gossip, all of these things, while we're running the race, we'll be running, and boom, we're down. We're done. We're dead. And you've experienced this. You know what it's like to be running and to fall or to trip. And so the writer said, like, you have to get rid of that now. That's something that you need to deal with now because it'll keep you out of the race. And let me say this. If you are a leader and you know there's some sin in your life that is going to trip you up, please, please, please get rid of it as soon as possible. Because here's the thing, what do runners run what? In a pack, typically, right? You've maybe seen the videos or you've been to a cross-country race, like they'll be running in a group, and if somebody does accidentally trip, what happens to everybody else? Like, everybody behind them goes with them. Okay? So this is for my elders in here, this is for our D group leaders, Catalyst community leaders, whoever you might be. These are for your moms and dads at home, right? You're leading a family. Like, what in your life you know that if people find out, or if my kids see, or if my wife sees, or if my husband sees, or if it just catches up with us, like, you know would trip your family up and would bring them harm. Do everything you can to remove that from your life. Please, please. So get in the race, seek to win it, right? Get rid of the excess weight, get rid of the sin that trips you up. And then here's what you're going to need to do to kind of keep going, because here's what's true for each and every one of us. A lot of you jump in the race, don't you? Like, yeah, Pastor, this is an awesome sermon or whatever. Like, I'm motivated. I'm jumping in. I'm getting in. You get in and you start to run. You realize, like, running's hard. You get tired. You start to slow down. People start handing you weighted vests, right? And you just start putting them on. Like, that's how kind of our life feels. So how do you keep going, or how do you reorient yourself to make sure that you're going to keep running? Here's what we're told. We do this, verse 2, by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects their faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then you won't be weary and give up. And so bring up the rotunda picture again. I want you to see something here. Again, this is hard to see. So you see the people around the outside there, and they're kind of looking down. Well, the yellow spot on the screen there, that's actually Jesus with his arms spread wide, and there's these little faces of people. And what is actually going on in the rotunda is there's this worship of Jesus. That's what's happening. Is Jesus is at the center of these great heroes of faith, and he's in heaven there, and there's worship there of all these people who are captivated by his lordship and his love. And so they're all actually they're around him, and what they're doing is they're looking at him as they kind of cross the finish line, as we think about the finish line. The Greek here is real simple. It's this idea that we are fixing our gaze on Jesus. And so the point is that you are deliberately turning away from distractions and turning towards Jesus and looking at him. Now, I'm going to mix sports metaphors here because I'm about done with what I know about running. I do know a little bit about football, and I know about how to make tackles. And so I'll teach tackling every once in a while for our kids and the teams I coach. And one of the things I'll do kind of on like a pursuit when I teach kids how to pursue, especially downhill. And so I'll have a running back here, linebacker, safety, whatever here, defensive lineman. And if they have to pursue around the corner here, here's what I tell them. There's a sideline. The runner can only go to the sideline. And if I'm going to pursue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my eyes on their hips, and I'm going to pursue their hips. And if you do this enough, like you understand about how fast you are, how fast they are, and what you do is you pursue and you tackle the hip, and you make it so the only place that they can go is like either into you or out of bounds to make the tackle. Well, a common mistake that kids will make or that football players will make, because they know like they're not going to run exactly where that person is. They have to be able to figure out where he's going. So they have to know they have to run at an angle. But a mistake kids will often make is they'll start to run and they'll look where they think the guy is going to go. And so what they do is they take their eyes off the ball carrier. And what I always have to tell them is, no, get your eyes back on the ball carrier. You're not tackling a spot. You're tackling a person. And if you take your eyes off the person, and if you don't know where the person is, he's going to elude you. Because if I'm a running back, you take your eyes off of me, I'm going to string you out, and I'm cutting back. But if you keep your eyes on me and keep running at that hip, and you just keep focusing on me and keep coming at me, like you're going to figure out like how to get to me at some point. It's just the way it works. It's the same thing for us. Right? What we often do, we'll just take our eyes off Jesus when we start putting different things back on. But if you focus and gaze on Jesus, like he's going to get you where you need to go. So focus on Jesus. For some of you, when I talked about the rotunda, like you have no earthly examples, do you? That's okay. That's okay. Or you could go around and you could look at those examples there. I know a lot about those people. Right? We learned about those people in church history. I could also tell you most of their faults. I can. But here's something that I can't do. I can't look at Jesus and tell you his faults. He doesn't have any. Right? He's the author and perfecter of the faith. He is what it looks like to be like fully alive, to be fully human. He's what it looks like to be made in the, like truly, purely, fully in the image of God. And if we look towards Jesus, right, your faith will keep you running. Like you can keep going. He initiated your faith. He's the one who's going to perfect your faith. And he ran the race. Why did he run the race? Because he knew there was joy set before him. He knew what was going to happen at the end. One is that you were going to be saved. Like he was able to endure the cross because he was going to save sinners. He was going he, he not only was going to save sinners, but he was going to experience glory and be sat at the right hand of God. And your race, right, should look like and model Jesus's. You're going to get there the same way Jesus got there. Jesus trusted in his Father. He had faith in his Father. And so for us, like, salvation here, as we're going, like, it's not the goal of running, but it is the gift. We are rewarded for a life well lived. So keep running and start running if you aren't. Now, I'm going to move quickly here because I do want to give you kind of something to hold on to. Like, what does it look like to run at Catalyst? I believe strongly in being a church and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And so here are some things that, like, you can just even ask yourself. Like, you can kind of evaluate, like, am I running well? The first is this: we ask everybody to be a disciple and make disciples here. Be a disciple and make disciples. In other words, following Jesus is our top priority. That he is our model for life. But we're not following celebrities. We're not following politicians. We're not even following pastors. That annoyed Paul himself, like as he was writing to the church. We're not following influencers. We are following Jesus. And so that means all of our life should look like a life oriented to following Jesus and becoming like Jesus. You can think about it like this, because some of this is like intimidating for some people. If Jesus were you, how would he live? Think of it like that. Right? Your mission on earth, like the way you're going to live, is going to be different than, like, you're not dying for people's sins. You're not. Okay? But God has a call on your life. So what does that look like? So you need to be a disciple. That's what it looks like to be a disciple. And you need to make disciples. Disciples make disciples. In other words, followers of Jesus help other people follow Jesus. That's part of the call of our life. This is the Great Commission. Go therefore into all the nations, right, and make disciples, baptizing them in the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And this is actually, Jesus says this. He says, I will be with you always if you do that. So many of us want the presence of God, but we neglect kind of the thing that Christ calls us to, where he promises to be present in, which is the making of disciples. And so when we talk about Catalyst communities, when we talk about D groups, when we talk about like women's ministry Bible studies, when we talk about your being with other followers and like helping them, this is what we're talking about. This is why it's so important. Or training your children up to follow the Lord. All of these things are incredibly important to us as a church, and are even like gauges on whether or not you're running well. You should either be teaching or training with others. Like every single one of us. Like runners run together, right? If you want to run fast, you run what? Alone. If you want to run a long way, you run together. Second is this: evangelize. Evangelize. This does mean sharing your faith with other people. It means sharing your testimony. This is what God has done in my life. I've placed my faith in Jesus, and this is how God has been faithful in the midst of my life. My guess, if you have you have a person or people to put in that rotunda, my guess is every one of you, like the person that you put in the rotunda, they probably helped lead you to faith. If they didn't help lead you to faith, they helped you to like maintain your faith. And so here's how we say it at Catalyst. There's just what I want you to start doing if you haven't started doing it already. Every person, each one, should have someone they are reaching. So each one, reach one. So begin with prayer. And then as God gives you opportunities, and sometimes this means that you need to step in and make opportunities, share your faith with that person, invite them to church, do whatever you need to do to get them closer to Jesus. Evangelize. Third, real simple, serve. Serve. It can be here, it can be wherever. Jesus said, I came not to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many. Our life should model his. And so, I'm going to, here in a couple of weeks, I think we even have opportunities here to sign up to serve. If you haven't taken our Discover class, take our Discover class. We want to get you serving in some way. It can be here, it can be with our ministry partners, it can be in the community, but do something to serve Christ and on his behalf. In other words, get in the game. Like, get in the race. The church is not a cruise ship, it's a battleship. Right? You know if you're on the sidelines. You know if you're watching. Now, let me just end with this. You are not in the rotunda yet. You are not there yet, but you do belong there. You belong in the rotunda. And so my goal for you, and God's goal for you and me, is to someday be in somebody's rotunda. We won't be painted by like a world-famous Romanian-born painter. like who specializes in Renaissance art. But, right, we will be held in memory by somebody. And the question that we should all ask ourselves is, will we have ran well? Will we have ran well? Will we have ran with endurance? Will we have fixed our eyes on Jesus? Right? Will you have been a witness to the faithfulness of God? Maybe more important is this. Ask yourself this question. When you meet Jesus, who's in the center there, will he look at you one day and say this: well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master. Will you be able to look back on your race and find joy in it because you fixed your eyes on Christ and you followed him? Let's pray. Father, we thank you. You are a good God. You are faithful, and so that means that we can place our faith in you. And I know there are people in here today that need to place their faith in your Son for the first time in their lives. And so I do pray that they would not look unto themselves, they would not look unto the people around them, but they would look to you, Jesus, who is the initiator of their faith. He is the initiator. You are the initiator of my faith. And for somebody here today, maybe Jesus is initiating faith in them. They came and they didn't even know why they're here this morning, but you have spoken to them in some way. And so, Father, I pray that through the power of the Spirit, through the love of Christ, that you would initiate faith in them today, that you would save them, that they would know that no matter what they have done in the past, Father, that Jesus has gone to the cross, that he's died on their behalf for their sins, that they are forgiven, and that they can be redeemed. And so, Father, I pray that this is a moment, as you're initiating faith in them, that they would repent, that they would turn from their sin, that they would give their sin to you, that they believe on your Son Jesus for everlasting life. I pray that over somebody today. And Father, for all of us, I pray that we'd be in the race, that we'd run with endurance, that you would help those who are getting tired right now, Father, to step back in, maybe those who have even stepped out. And I pray this in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. Amen. Now you're going to stand. We're going to sing one more song here. If you've come this morning and you need prayer, maybe you need some prayer for endurance. Maybe there's something going on in your life right now that you need help with. You need somebody to maybe give you some guidance and some prayer. We'll have some of our prayer team members are standing right over here by this back corner. They're there for you. Maybe you just came. I was talking to a lady who needs surgery. Maybe there's just something that you need right now prayed over. It has nothing to do with even the sermon that I preached. You just need Jesus. You need the power of the Holy Spirit in your life. Don't hesitate to go to our prayer team back here during the song.